Hello. Welcome. I'm going to give Zoom about 30 seconds to let everybody actually filter in. You can use the chat to say hello and tell us where you are in the world and what you're writing if you wish. While you say hello in the chat, I will pull up my presentation and we will get started. Alicia, hello. Joanne's in Pennsylvania, Pauline's in Somerset, England, Desiree's in Houston, Chris, all right, hello. We've got Toronto, we've got Michigan, we've got New Orleans, we've got Wisconsin. I love when everybody shows up from all over. I am originally from Minnesota and I'm in Portland, Oregon, and therefore I like to start things on time. So let's get going. For those of you who don't know me already, I'm going to pull my mic a little closer. Hopefully that didn't mess with your sound. I am Sue Campbell. I am a book marketing and mindset coach, heavy on the mindset. I work with award-winning authors, best-selling authors, regular old authors, both fiction and nonfiction, traditionally published, independently published. I just love writers. I love working with writers. I could do my mindset thing in any niche, but I'm a writer myself, and that's why I want to help because our voices need to get out into the world. I also get shit done by managing my mind. I have published 2 books. I've got another one that is almost ready to go out the door. I run pages and platforms. I have 2 neurospicy kids and a husband. I have chronic health conditions that I manage. And for the most part, I am happy, satisfied, and not burned out. And it did not used to be that way. Right. I would say, I always tell my kids, like, hey, I didn't really have any executive function or full brain development till I was about 28. So don't worry, you'll get there. Right. I was an absolute mess in my early 20s. And now I am teaching webinars on goal setting and helping authors reach their dreams. So if you feel like you're a hopeless case, you're not. Because if I could do it from where I was, then you can absolutely do it too. I do recommend, because this is going to be really workshop style, you can workshop your particular goal setting strategy during this class. I want you to do that. So I recommend turning off any other distractions. This isn't something you keep half an ear on. This is something you can do. So grab a pen or a notebook or whatever way you like to take notes, and we will get started. So we're going to go through, first of all, the pitfalls of goal setting, because the way it is done traditionally has a lot of issues with it, as far as I'm concerned. And once we sort of look at those head on, I'll walk you through a 5-step goal setting process that circumvents, right, a lot of those traditional pitfalls. We need a better way to do it. And I have basically smushed together all of the best ways to goal set and come up with a process. We are going to spend a little bit of time after that talking about a program I have called Goal Getter School. This will be the 7th cohort of Goal Getter School. So this is a tried and true program where I lead writers through 3 months. I'm developing a project plan for you. I'm showing you how to work with yourself, how to get over self-sabotage, and you're setting a big goal to attain by the end of the 3 months. And then we will absolutely have time for questions and answers, or as I like to call them at pages and platforms, we call them questions and responses. We can respond, but you, my friend, are the one with the answers. And we may have some time for coaching as well. Hope we do. Okay. We are going to use the chat room just like we are right now to be chatty. I might ask you some questions throughout this, and you can put them in the chat. And then if you have a question you really want me to answer by the end of the program, at the end, you need to put those in the Q&A box. So you should see in your little Zoom toolbar, hopefully there's a Q&A box, and we'll put those and have those open at the end. So tell me in the chat box right now, before we get started, what are your biggest goal setting or goal getting challenges? That does actually help me customize on the fly a little bit. And surely we're not doing raised hands yet today. We might at the end, but for right now, I'm going to have you put your hand down. And if you need to tell me something, you can tell me in the webinar chat. Because otherwise I got too many things going on in one webinar. Pam says, I just seem to resist following any schedule. Okay. Naomi says, keeping to my goals. So it sounds like you're like setting them and then you're kind of letting them go, Naomi. Pam says, I don't like routine. Okay. Despina says, make the phone calls and write the emails. Okay, so that's the problematic part. Christine says, how to realistically grasp the size of a goal. That's a good one. Andrea says, setting and keeping a schedule. Carol says, not making a decision due to overthinking. Yes, your inner saboteur. If I can get you to overthink, that's rock solid strategy for your inner saboteur. Rayanne says, I stop after a couple of weeks, even though it's going well for me. Yes, so much of this is mindset stuff. Do we see this? It's not just like, just follow this checklist and you'll reach your goal. A lot of it is up here. Kathleen says, figuring out where my blocks are. Shannon says, seeing my way to the next goal. All right, really good stuff in here. I can't read all of them, but I will go back and download the chat afterwards and read all of them. But this is really helpful for me. It's also helpful for you to realize that other people are having the same struggle. This is not a you problem, right? This is missing information and a missing mindset approach that we don't get in school. We're just told to turn that assignment in by when I say to turn it in. And nobody shows us how to work with ourselves and our own individual way of doing things in order to do that. Okay. So here are some of the goal setting pitfalls that I see with traditional goal setting, productivity books, that kind of thing that we see out in the culture, that we see on social media. Number one is we set goals from sort of a graspy, clinging place. Like, I'm going to set this goal and I have to attain it, because if I attain it, it means I'm worthy or I'm smart or I'm successful. And the flip side of that is if I don't attain it in the way that I think I will, or by the time that I think I will, I am not worthy. I am not successful. I am not smart. Right? So we put too much really needy, graspy energy into the goal, and that's not healthy. It actually just creates a lot of fear around the goal, and our brain doesn't want to sustain that, right? The next one, and tell me in the chat, like if one of these resonates with you, drop a 1 in the chat if I'm saying something that you're like, yep, that's how that feels. All right. Yeah, I'm seeing some 1s on that one. The next one is that we don't have a system or habits that will help us accomplish the goal once we set it. We just set the goal, but we haven't actually ramped ourselves up into systems and habits that will help us accomplish the goal. That's a big one that I see a lot, because I talk to hundreds and hundreds of writers, if not thousands in settings like this, but hundreds one-on-one throughout the course of the year. The third one is I give up in the face of obstacles, right? We give up as soon as something hits, like, oh, well, my car broke, or, you know, my air conditioner went out, or, you know, whatever the example is of something that goes sideways in your life temporarily, we give up in the face of that obstacle. Right? That costs money, or my boss says I have to work overtime, so therefore I can't, right? So giving up in the face of obstacles is very, very, very common. And your inner saboteur will consider almost anything an obstacle if it means it can shut down your goal. And then a really big one, and drop a 1 in the chat if you do this to yourself, is that oftentimes we're assholes to ourselves throughout the whole goal setting process, right? We're like working ourselves really hard. We're not building in any rest. We have a lot of critical self-talk to try to whip ourselves into doing the thing. And then we will beat ourselves up if we didn't actually end up doing the thing. I'm seeing a lot of resonance with that last one, right? This is not okay, right? There's a different way to work towards and reach your goals that doesn't have to involve any of these pitfalls, or can at least get you on the road to reforming your way of doing it, right? We don't have to be perfect in our new approach either. But let's jump into looking at how to set your goals in 5 steps. So this is the workshop part. So get out your pen and paper. The first thing that we're going to do, and again, this is a little contrary to mainstream goal setting, because most goal setting people will tell you, you set a very small, attainable goal, a SMART goal, right? SMART goals, I mean, it's a sound strategy in its own way, but it really doesn't do much for you in terms of emotional energy, right? In terms of, I'm really excited about this. So what I like to do first, and we will get to the smaller goals to get you there, but the first thing I want you to do is actually set a crazy goal, a wildly improbable goal. Martha Beck calls these WIGs, wildly improbable goals. So this is a career level goal that you're not going to be able to accomplish in the next 3 months, and that you're not fully in control of, right? You need things to happen out in the world that you don't have complete control of for you to be able to reach this goal. So some examples might be like, oh, I have a goal that someday I want Terry Gross to interview me on Fresh Air, or I want to be the next Margaret Atwood, or I want to get my book made into a Netflix miniseries, right? So tell me in the chat a couple of your examples of your wildly improbable goals. And don't worry, none of us are expecting that you're 100% going to do this. This is a safe space to share these goals. They can be wild. That's the point. So Desiree wants to get an agent. Naomi wants their story turned into a TV series. What else we got? Sell 1 million copies. Yes. Netflix series and a Pulitzer. Yes. Get a TV series accepted by the BBC. Get my play on a stage. Yes. Publish all over Latin America. I would like to finish my book by the end of the year. Yes. Publish 3 books. Okay, these are great. And everybody's going to be different, right? Wildly improbable for you is different than wildly improbable for somebody else. But when you imagine attaining this wildly improbable goal, does that feel exciting? Give me a yes if it feels exciting when you really imagine that that has happened. Yes, yes or a 1 works. Yep. Right? So we have this umbrella, this wildly improbable umbrella goal that provides excitement and emotional fuel so that we can start taking steps towards the goals that could get us there, right? All right, so write down your wildly improbable goal for yourself. That is step 1. The next, step 2, is to know why. Why do we want that? So for the wildly improbable goal that you just named, right? And this is not new. Everybody's talking about knowing your why lately, and that's good because it's really, really important. But think about, why do I want to attain this goal? And let me tell you a little bit of science behind doing the strong why. There are 2 things. So one is your strong why, if it includes a service element, right? If you getting this big goal that you want has a positive impact on somebody else or on another group of people, that gives it more strength and more emotional fuel. And if there is not only a long-term benefit, right? Like someday Netflix is going to pay me a lot of money. That's long-term benefit. What's the short-term benefit? So this science actually comes from studying exercise. So the people who had this long-term goal of why they wanted to exercise did not show up as much as the people who said, actually, when I exercise in a day, I just feel way better that day, right? So you can have a long-term benefit, sure, but that's kind of understood. If your why also involves a short-term benefit, that's even better. And so you can even have more than one why. You could have a short-term and a long-term one. So you want to know your why, and you want to write it down. So you can write it down in the chat for me if you want to share, but most importantly, write it down for yourself. Chris says, I was gifted a talent that should be honored, but above all, shared for the enjoyment of others. Yes, that's great. That's such a strong why. Despina says, because it would mean that generally speaking, it might make society think about how we behave with each other and respect each other. Yes, that's great. Like, how can I help society like generate more respect for each other? Scott says, success gives resources to do it again and again. Yep, absolutely. Alicia says, to help people with mental health and is a love letter to my mentor. That's beautiful. Carol says, offer a message and a solution to the world. Lori says, empowerment of women. All right, those are very strong whys. Love it. Soraya says, to push boundaries and break the rules because no one plays it safe. I risk everything because what do I have to lose? These are great. Okay, so that's number one was we want the wildly improbable goal. Number two was we want to know why. Why do we want that? Your why has to be stronger than your desire in the moment to not work towards it, right? Your why has to be powerful enough to overcome your desire to like do something other than writing, right? To watch a movie or scroll on social media or whatever it is. All right. So now this one, number three, is probably one of the key ingredients that everybody misses in the mainstream culture. So I want you to know how you want it to feel. When you hit that wildly improbable goal, what emotion do you think you're going to be able to experience by hitting that goal? What do you think it's going to feel like? Tell me in the chat. You hit your goal, you imagine it, and you're like, oh, I'm going to be feeling this. What is that emotion? Andrea says happiness. Cry with joy. I can finally breathe. Satisfaction, elation, pride, euphoria. Yes. And Carol, the finally breathe, think about what the emotion is. Is it relief in that case? Yep. Kathleen says relief. Let's see. Purpose. Yeah. Connection, excitement, euphoria. Proud and giddy, motivated, peaceful and fulfilled. Connected, community connection. Freedom. Okay, so here's the secret sauce, everybody. The more that you can feel that emotion now and every day that you're working towards your goal, the more likely you are to actually hit your goal. That feeling is the emotional fuel that you need to spur yourself on and tackle a bunch of stuff that might be hard and it might be really uncomfortable. So the more you can connect to that emotion now instead of withholding it, because that's what our culture tells us to do. You're not allowed to feel proud until you really deliver the goods, until the Oscar's in your hands, until the Pulitzer's in your hands. You're not allowed to feel proud, right? And that's all bullshit. We experience the emotion we think it's going to get us now all along the way on a micro level. And that is how we give ourselves what it takes to actually keep going. So tell me if that's a new concept for you. Drop a 1 in the chat if that's a new concept of, oh, I get to feel that now. Yes. And with our writers' imaginations, we can feel that now. Right? And also with the steps I'm going to show you on the goal getting piece, you can feel that now. Okay. So we're going to start to generate that feeling a little bit by doing something that is called I call the goal sandwich exercise. So this is something I learned from the woman who trained me as a life coach, but I gave it the cute name because it's a good name. It's goal sandwich exercise. So make a quick list of things that you want for your writing career. Drop a couple in the chat, but write them down on a piece of paper for yourself too. So what do you want to happen in your career? We named the wildly improbable one, but give me a couple more smaller ones, lower level. We're going to have a little list. Sue wants an agent and a best-selling book. Rayanne says to polish my books for publication. Naomi says have agents reach out to me for film and TV options. Despina says, oh, there's moving fast for people to take work seriously and want more. Kathleen wants to write textbooks. Christina wants to be able to quit her job. Linda wants to do book readings and story sharing. Okay, great. So that's a list of stuff that you want for your career. Now I want you to make a list of things that you already have. Okay, so what do you already have in your career? Even if it's just a really amazing idea, even if it's an outline, even if it's a really messy draft, something that you already have that at one time you wanted and now you have it, right? We always think about what do I want? And we think of those things that we don't have. But what are those things that we have that we want? But at one time we didn't have them. Now we have them. We can appreciate them. Okay, so Catherine says, I have a folder full of essays. Sue says, I have 61,000 words written. Susan says, to entertain the world. Okay, yeah, and a writing group, right? You have a writing group. You have writing friends. A mind map for a memoir. This is great. Yep, lots of story already written. I've published several books. I've had a performance of my play, an option by a publisher, and a bunch of projects that are in progress. Okay, this is great. So appreciate for a minute, right? If we want to create that feeling of pride and achievement and freedom and all of those things that we said we wanted to get out of the big goal, when you look at a list of things you already have, that helps you start to generate that emotion. You feel that? You're like, oh, I do have assets, right? This is all in my assets column of stuff I already have. The one time I didn't have it. So that feeling state, when you look at that list, I want you to get in touch with that. Tell me when you look at that list of things you already have, how do you feel? Sue says blessed. Beautiful. Carol says it adds to confidence. Yep. Gayla says proud. Despina says belief in myself. Camberly says buoyant. Yes, that's great. Excited, proud. Wow, I have more than I thought. Gratitude, right? Especially for those of you who are neurodivergent or have ADHD in particular, sometimes you get blindness to the things that you've already accomplished. So writing them down periodically, keeping track of them and having a place to review them can really help. Okay? All right. So now we're going to take one of your unaccomplished goals and we're going to sandwich it between the goals that you've already attained. All right. So it looks like this. You're going to state the unaccomplished goal as if it's already been accomplished. You're not going to put this on your website and like misrepresent yourself. This is just for you. This is just an exercise for you. So for example, if you have I have published 2 books already done. I'm a speaker at South by Southwest. Hasn't happened yet, but I'm putting it in there as if it has, as if I'm already on the speaking agenda. And then the other one that's already accomplished, I have another manuscript nearing completion, already done. So we're sandwiching the one that has not been done in between the ones that have, because our brain will not like that one's in there and it's not true. So it will start to work towards proving it true. It will start to work towards making it happen. Right? Very, very fun. Very fun way to do it. And that, again, generates emotional fuel. We are human creatures, and the reason we act is because we have an emotion. And if we have a really negative, demoralizing emotion, we actually don't act, right? Or we act in a way that is out of alignment with reaching our goals, right? We just crawl under the covers in bed. So the key that is missing to a lot of goal setting techniques is just getting people excited. Of course, we're excited initially when we set the goal, but we need to practice it and be able to keep it going. Okay. All right. So step 4, how are we doing on time? We're doing pretty well. We might go a tiny bit over so we have enough time for questions. And then there will be a replay that comes out. So step 4 is we're going to now set some incredibly specific do goals. So our wildly improbable goal was something that was out of our control, right? We can move towards it. We can take steps that will make it more likely, but we don't have total control over it. And it's a long-term goal. What we do have control over are incredibly specific do goals. And if you say it real fast, it sounds like doogles, right? That was another thing from Brooke Castillo, my coach. You can call them doogles. So we're going to pick a 3-month goal. So this is something that is within your control that if you did it, would reasonably get you a little bit closer to your wildly improbable goal. Right? So we can't sell a miniseries to Netflix if we don't have a script or if we don't have a book to base it off of, right? So getting to your next draft would be a good example of a 3-month goal. So share in the chat what your 3-month goal would look like. And it needs to be incredibly specific. Tell me in the chat. Next 3 months, Alicia says a final draft of my play. John says complete polished book draft. Carol says manuscript ready to present to an agent. Scott says have most, if not all, of a first draft. Andrea says complete first draft of my first novel in a series. These are great. You guys are totally getting it. These are all within your control. And with writers, it's almost always drafts. Somebody give me a marketing goal, please. I really want to see at least one marketing goal. Sue says write 20,000 more words. Maria says first draft. Sonia says do my first audiobook. Okay, fantastic. Now we have to break that big 3-month goal down into smaller do goals. Okay. So for an example, if you want to finish your first draft, or we call it a 0 draft, right? Because it puts less pressure on it. If you want to finish that really messy first draft in 3 months, you're going to need a bunch of little goals to get there. So maybe it is that you're going to need to identify what research you need to do, and then you need to actually do the research. You need to find a form of accountability. You need to put writing time on your calendar so it actually happens. Remember about systems and habits. And then we need to maybe set and meet a daily word goal. Doesn't have to be that, but I'm just giving you an example here. So that is an example of breaking this down to smaller and smaller tasks that you can then actually tackle. So what I want you to do is pick a few do goals for this week, right? For this week, very, very actionable. What are the very next small things that you need to do to get towards that 3-month goal? Tell me in the chat. Gayla says, create a funnel to my direct shop that brings daily sales. Christine says, set up website. Alicia says, start an Instagram. Catherine says, have 50 Substack subscribers. Okay, Catherine, you don't have control over how many Substack subscribers you get, but you can do activities that make that 50 inevitable. So what are those tasks that you're going to do to get to 50 Substack subscribers? See the difference? Right? Like if I say I have to get 50 Substack subscribers, but I don't know the tasks I need to do that, it shuts your brain down a little bit and makes it harder to work towards the goal. So do the thinking now of what do I need to do? What are the activities that are going to make those 50 Substack subscribers more likely? I need to email everybody in my network and let them know about it and send them to the Substack to subscribe, for example. Let's see. Look up relevant agents. Despina or Sue says write 1,000 words. Linda says block time to write. Kathleen says actually start the conversation with my advisor. I'll email her after this class. Yes, so concrete. Go over the present timeline and set scenes to complete that one. Write my last scene so I can work backwards. Ooh, that's fun. Write for 30 minutes to 1 hour each day. And Amy, if you're not already writing for 30 minutes a day, I would actually, I don't know if you were in the Mind Over Manuscript Challenge a couple of weeks ago, but your inner saboteur may kick up a really big fuss of even trying to carve out a half an hour. So literally, if you can try that, but if it doesn't work, you go down to 1 sentence. Today, I'm going to write 1 sentence and almost inevitably, not always, sometimes it's only one sentence, but you still get the gold star, right? But the one sentence brings that threshold down enough so your inner saboteur doesn't pitch a fit that you don't have time. And then the one sentence turns into a half an hour, right? Sometimes time things can get a little tricky, or you could, if you want to do time thing, you can say 5 minutes. I'm just going to spend 5 minutes. Same with John, write 1 hour each day, right? That if you find you cannot do that, you just have to lower the bar until you can. Let's see. Okay, fantastic. So we shared those in the chat. Now the fifth one, this is where we get into that systems and habits, where we don't have systems and habits. And you guys just sort of demonstrated, again, I don't know your situation, so I could be wrong, but you saw in the chat, a lot of people are like, I'm going to write 1 hour a day, or I'm going to, they'll set a goal that is sort of aspirational, right? But you can ramp yourself up to get there. Because if you set a goal that's too aspirational and you don't hit it, you've just demoralized yourself. So when we create implementation intentions and we keep them small and manageable, we flex that muscle and we build evidence for ourselves that actually we are going to be able to do this. So let's talk about implementation intentions. This is a concept that was popularized by James Clear in Atomic Habits, but it's actually from a researcher named Peter Gollwitzer. So basically all you're doing is saying, I will do this behavior at this time in this location. Now, I know someone earlier in the chat was saying, I don't like schedules. So we can play with you a little bit and find different ways to do this. But for a lot of folks, implementation intentions will go so far to helping you. The science shows that filling this out makes it 2 to 3 times more likely that you will actually do it. So your implementation intention for this week, I want you to write it down. So tell me, I will do this behavior, that thing that you just said you wanted to do this week. I will do this behavior at this time in this place. And then you're going to put it on the calendar. So tell me your implementation intention in the chat. You already told me what you were going to do, so let's figure it out. And this is where I'm really going to be able to help you, because I can spot the issues in people's implementation intentions like nobody's business. Let's see. Rayanne says, I will show up for my London Writers group at 11 a.m. in my office. Hopefully, I will also write a bit. Okay. So that hopefully I will also write a bit. So far you've only committed to showing up. So why don't you try one sentence? Instead of hoping, you're going to decide, I'm going to write at least one sentence, because you get to decide what's the hope. Like what outside force is going to make it so you do or don't write, right? You got to take control, even if it's just that one sentence. Carol says, I will write at from 9 to 10 at a desk. Okay, so if your hand isn't moving that whole time, or if your inner saboteur balks at setting aside a whole hour, Carol, you can bring it down. Like I will work from 9 to 9:05 at a minimum at my desk. And my stretch goal is I'll go till 10. Andrea says, I will write 30 minutes on Saturday morning at my local cafe. Yes, very concrete. Chris says 10 a.m. daily. Where are you going to be, Chris? And what are you going to do? Right? What's the actual activity? Like, I'm going to work on this chapter. I'm going to create a new draft of this chapter. I'm going to edit that chapter. Get as concrete as you can, so you know if you are successful. Sue says, I will write for 30 minutes twice a week in my office. Okay, which days? Twice a week? Great. Something happens on Monday you didn't expect. Something happens on Tuesday you didn't expect. Something happens on Wednesday you didn't expect. And you keep pushing it to later in the week. And pretty soon your week's gone and you haven't done your twice a week because you didn't set an appointment for it. Soraya says, I will block time to attend StoryPath course for an hour at the library at 3 p.m. Okay, great. It sounds like you're just watching the course at that point, Soraya. So that's very concrete. Maria says, I will write 1,000 words at 6:30 a.m. in my library. Okay. And again, if your inner saboteur starts balking, you just bring it down and you make 1,000 the stretch goal. Maybe you're already writing that a day. So if you already have the system and habit, then you're good. I will write at the library from 3 to 5 p.m. I'm assuming you mean today, but in case you didn't have a day in mind, you got to name the day. And again, it also helps to identify, what am I going to specifically work on? Am I just journaling, or am I working on a specific part of my manuscript? Okay, I think you guys get the idea. I want to make sure we have time for Q&A and all of that stuff. I want to see if there's any other ones. All right. Fabulous. And then I think it was in today's newsletter, but it might be next week. I talked about building the marketing habit, but it's using James Clear's 4 habit laws with writing specific examples. So if you go read the newsletter that went out today, that is another great example of how to work with fitting this into your schedule, creating the systems and habits to do it. There's a lot of good tips in that article. So here are the steps that we did today already. We set a wildly improbable goal. We found a why for it that has lots of emotion attached to it, and hopefully has some short-term benefit as well as some long-term benefit, and is hopefully of service. We talked about how we want it to feel, and then being able to feel that feeling all the way along, right? We act because we have a feeling. And the feeling comes from the story that we tell ourselves. That's a different class. That's a different webinar, but that's like the whole drum that I am constantly beating. The story you tell yourself creates an emotion, and that emotion drives what you will or you won't do. So you have to intentionally tell a story to yourself, not just the story that you're writing. You have to tell yourself an empowering story that keeps you going. And then step 4, we made do goals specifically. So we did a 3-month one, and then we're breaking that down. What needs to happen for me to get to that 3-month one? And then we take those tasks that we've broken down and we create implementation intentions as to when and where it's actually going to happen. The other thing I want you to consider is planning for obstacles. We know the types of obstacles that we frequently run into, right? My kid's going to be sick from school. My aging mother is going to need my help for something. My cat's going to need to go to the vet, right? All of those things that you know could happen, we need to have a plan to deal with any obstacles that are presented. So one of the ways you can do that is to set a plan A, a plan B, a plan C, right? So plan A is a day where nothing goes wrong, but it's so helpful to have a backup plan in your back pocket. Right. So if you're writing 30 minutes a day, but something goes sideways, then you can default to, okay, I'm going to write 1 sentence today, no matter what. This shows your inner saboteur that you are in charge, even if there are obstacles. You are committed with a capital C, and you're not going to give up on what you said you were going to do, even when things get challenging. And that actually makes the challenges more fun, because you're like, oh, yeah, well, you didn't derail me, so try again, sucker, right? Like, it makes it much more fun. Saray says, what does WIG stand for? Wildly improbable goal, WIG. And if you don't like the abbreviation, you can just use wildly improbable goal. All right. So I'm going to talk for a minute about Goal Getter School, because it is the best program I have ever developed. I'm super proud of it. So this is if you want to finish a draft, or you want to grow your email list, or you want to create a launch plan and actually launch your book. You have some big 3-month level project, or you have a bigger project where you just need 3 months to get to the next step of the project. Do you want to do that by September? Right? Do you want the kind of support and structure and mindset guidance that's going to help you actually do that by September? Goal Getter School for Authors, we're on the 7th cohort. The reason that I even developed this program is because I spent the first 30 years of my life ignoring the fact that I wanted to be a writer so strongly. Like, I knew it from the time I was 7 years old. And I did not have the tools to get serious about it until I was approximately 30 years old. And I didn't have the really good, powerful tools until I was in my late 30s, early 40s. So I firmly believe that you actually showing up and doing your writing and honoring the stories that are within you is part of not just building a better life for yourself, it's actually part of building a better world. There are too many writers right now who are like, the world's a mess, I give up, what is the point? That is exactly the wrong way to think about it. Now is the time when we show up. It's more important than ever to get our voices out into the world. So Goal Getter School, because it has to be, is extremely heavily mindset focused, and it's also extremely practical. So we've got all the practical tools and then me mindset coaching you. The next session starts in June, and I've made a couple of changes this time around. So you can actually, there's going to be a June session and there's going to be a September session. So if you're like, oh, this summer's not going to work because I'm traveling, you can jump into the fall session now, or you can do both sessions. If you're like, I got 6 months of work, you can do both sessions for a reduced rate. So let's talk a little bit about what is in the program. We have had students finish drafts of manuscripts that have literally been moldering for years, right? Like I've had this story in my brain for 10 years, and now in 3 months, I have a whole first draft that I never ever thought I could do. Or they have created and executed entire book launch plans, or they have pitched and landed podcasts to promote their books. I had one person who's just like, that's all I'm concentrating on, as many podcasts as possible. We've had people who've completed and launched entire audiobooks and more. We actually have on the Write Anyway podcast, there's a bunch of episodes that are detailed case studies of people who've been in the program. So writers just like you, even if you know you're not going to join the program, you can go and listen to that and glean all sorts of goodness from what they learned and applied from the program. So we have a 3-month goal-focused group coaching program, but the really genius part of the program that I absolutely love is it also has private sessions. So we have 1 week of group, and then the next week you have a private session with me. And then the next week we have a group call again. I have been in so many programs, some private and some group. And I'm like, you get certain things out of a group program and certain other things out of private. I'm like, why are people not putting these together, right? And giving you both. So that's what I did. Again, we have 2 sessions, either from June to August. It's actually like the first little tiny bit of September, and then September through November. And as I said, the group meeting will rotate with a weekly private session. Your first private session is going to be an hour long because I am going to, in collaboration with you, craft you a customized project plan that takes into consideration your work style, all the other things that you have that are responsibilities in your life, where you are in your project. This is not a one-stop, everybody cram themselves into this one system, because that's just not realistic. I've worked with a lot of neurodivergent writers in this program. We need special consideration for that. They're not going to do it like I would do it, right? We've got to create something that's actually going to work for who you are. The private sessions, other than that first session, are 20 minutes each. We can get an incredible amount of mindset work done in 20 minutes. And if you were in the Mind Over Manuscript Challenge, you saw that. I would coach somebody for like 10 minutes and they'd have a breakthrough. You'll have private community access, and you will have quarterly alumni calls once the program is done. So you're done with the 3 months. Every quarter, all of the people, all of the alumni come together on a group call, and I spend time talking with each one of you and be like, are you still on track? What do we need to troubleshoot? How you doing? Share your wins. So even after the program is gone, you still get to touch base with me about what is going on with you so I can help keep you on track. So we cover both long and short-term goal setting. In fact, what I led you through today is actually the first group call where we do that really intensively. And you're going to make like a really clear, solid plan. And then I'm going to help you scope it properly, right? So that you're not taking on too much or too little for the 3 months. We will do project planning. So I'm going to create a customized project plan just for you. And then I'm going to help you tweak it as necessary along the way without feeling guilty, right? And without having a bad reason to abandon it. We are going to talk about systems and habits. So how do you work this into your life? Because it's not just about this goal. It's about creating a way of working so that you can reach all of your goals going forward. It's about anticipating obstacles. I am not going to give you a program where I'm teaching you how to burn yourself out in 3 months, right? This needs to be sustainable, and we need to account for obstacles. We also need to create not a love of discomfort, but a big appreciation for it. We need to be willing to feel discomfort, because the main reason people really give up on goals is because something gets uncomfortable or scary or hard, right? So I'm going to give you mindset tools that are going to help you get way more comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I'm going to teach you how to hold yourself accountable, because I can't actually hold anybody accountable as a coach, right? But I can invite you to hold yourself accountable by asking you some very tough questions, loving tough questions. And then infused through everything I do, we're working on the story that you tell yourself, because that is how you create the emotional fuel that will allow you to keep moving forward, even when things get tough. And there's more. So the homework, right, because it's called Goal Getter School, the only homework you're going to have is your personal project plan. There's not going to be a ton of stuff that you have to consume, right? We're going to give you, maybe you do need to consume some learning, but we're going to be very targeted about it. And we're just going to make sure you are focused on your personal project plan. There's no other BS homework. And as we go along, I will give you any tools or mindset resources or craft resources or marketing resources that you may need. We'll get you in the right direction. So the results at the end of the 3 months is, yeah, you've reached your goal. You've had a customized project plan. You've reached your goal, and you've fundamentally changed the way that your brain handles challenges around goals. And now you believe so much more is possible for you. Right? If you've been demoralized about your own ability to set and reach goals, this is how it changes. So the investment, we've got 2 sessions. So if you do a single session, you can choose either summer or fall. It's $2,400 if you pay in full. This has private coaching in it. So this is why the price point is where it is. And this is actually one of the cheapest ways to get private coaching from me, because my 1-to-1 6-month call package is about $6,000. Both summer and fall, again, if you know you need that 6 months, that's going to be $4,200. So you save when you do for both terms. And all of these have payment plans available. So you don't have to pay it all in a chunk if you don't want to. As I said, this is cohort 7, the one that starts in June, and the fall one would be cohort 8. So very proven program. And I've made some tweaks this time. I've lowered the price to make it more accessible. And the way that I did that was I took out membership in the Happily Ever Author Club, which used to be included in the program. So I still recommend that you take it, but now it's optional, where you can go into that if you want to and add it if you want to. But I wanted to make this program more accessible, so I gave people that option. I have eliminated applications. You used to have to apply to be in the program. And it wasn't because I was evaluating whether you were good or not. It was just to make sure that this was a fit and you were expecting of the program what it could actually do. And I did that through applications. But I have proven to myself over the last 6 cohorts that I always get good people in here, and the applications are always really high quality. And I'm confident that we can work out any alignment issues, right? If someone comes into the program, I'm like, oh, you were wrong about what this can do. No worries. I just refund you within that first week. I've never offered registration for multiple terms before. So this just allows you to plan ahead. If you know you can't do it this summer because of other things that are going on, you can just drop into that fall session and know that you have a spot. This is also the first time that I've ever offered a discount for educators. So if you're a teacher, email me, tell me where you work and how you educate, and then I will send you a coupon for that 15% off discount. If you want to enroll or check out the details, the page to do that is in the chat. It's pagesandplatforms.com/goal-getter. If you enroll today, because you've already heard me talk about this and you've had your eye on Goal Getter School for all this time, you can get an additional 1-hour private session with me to use whenever you want, right? So it's like, oh, 6 months after the program, I really need Sue right now. You'll be able to use that bonus call whenever you need it. We have a lot of testimonials. Again, we have the whole podcast where we did a bunch of episodes with people from the program. But people are saying a lot of wonderful things about the program. I love doing the alumni calls because I get to hear how it's still going well for everybody. So I'll let you read through those on the page because I want to get to questions and responses today. So I'm going to stop sharing so I can see, you could see me better anyway. And I'm going to move over to the Q&A box and start answering questions after I take a little sip. Hold on. Okay, Chris says, I'm retired and living in Mexico. Congratulations. I'm constantly failing at blocking time to dive in my writing. My life is full of people and adventures. The flames of overthinking about failure rip through everything. Okay, I love writers so much. Look at how dramatic the language that we use is. Chris, you're obviously a very good writer, right? Like the flames of overthinking about failure rip through everything. So that's part of the story that you're telling yourself. And writers, we tend to use really dramatic language. So first of all, I just want to normalize you're not alone in like, oh, I thought once I was retired, I'd be able to dedicate all of this time to writing, right? Because a lot of writers will say, I don't have time. And then when they're retired, they say, what the hell? I have the time and I'm not using it. So I want to normalize that for you. You're not the only one. So what you have to do, I think it's really incremental, right? We've got to, first of all, make the language less dramatic. Look at circumstances, just data when you're describing this, right? Like, all right, my life is full of people and adventures. Monday, I have this. Tuesday, I have that. Wednesday, I have that. Thursday, I have that, right? And we don't need to throw out the good things in our life to make room for writing. Your inner saboteur wants you to believe, well, you're going to have to give up all your relationships and all your adventures if you want to write. That's simply not true. Right. So I'm going to assign you some homework, Chris, and you can do it while you're on the call listening to the rest of this if you want. Write down all of your thoughts about writing and your constant failure and, anything related, just like stream of consciousness, you're writing down all of your thoughts about what's happening. And then you're going to go back and read them and you're going to question all of those thoughts. Like, is this really true? Is there another way to think about this? What is also true that would give me more emotional fuel to actually do it, right? So I want you to do that like mindset work piece of it first. And then I want you to I'm just going to see if I can write one sentence a day for the next 3 days. Build yourself a little evidence that it's possible, even in the midst of your wonderful life in Mexico, right? So just those little increments. I'm going to write one sentence a day for 3 days. This is where I'm going to do it. This is when I'm going to do it. If we can get over the initial friction to getting started, we will be shocked at how easy it actually is. Great question, and I'm sure one that a lot of people can relate to, Chris. Thank you for asking that. Maria says, what good ways to stay disciplined with daily writing? Another great question. So again, you keep the level for entry small, right? So Maria, if you're having trouble with writing every day, you lower the bar to 1 sentence per day. It doesn't mean you're only going to write 1 sentence per day. They're like, this is my personal goal. My goal is I write 1 sentence every day. And 99% of the time, I'm writing more than 1 sentence, significantly more than 1 sentence. But it is the same gold star. There's a guy I follow called Phil Stutz, and he talks about this as a string of pearls. There's no different size pearl. Writing 600 words or 1,600 words is the same as writing 1 sentence in terms of you get to put a pearl on a string, because the value is in getting started, overcoming inertia, overcoming the squawking of your inner saboteur. So we develop daily discipline by developing an identity as the person who shows up and does even just a little bit, right? Also watch your self-talk. If we're belittling ourselves, if we're berating ourselves, if it sounds like the voice of that teacher who was really hard on us, pay attention to that. Label it as your inner saboteur and try to get above it, right? Above the noise a little bit and say, all I have to do today is write 1 sentence. I think I can do that, right? So, and that builds, the more you start building that evidence, then you start feeling good, right? And it just keeps building and keeps building. Another great question I'm sure a lot of people can relate to. Yes. Okay. So this is another comment. Anonymous says, what if you struggle to set a wildly improbable goal because it tends to fill you with dread of failure instead of excitement? So that tells me you have a very active inner saboteur, and that's normal. So I just want to normalize that for you. That's very normal. I actually, the first time I tried one of these exercises, one of my colleagues was like, the minute I think about being successful, I freak out and I get really scared. So I want you to just set your wildly improbable goal within a comfort zone right now. Or you can also imagine that your wildly improbable goal involves suddenly I am comfortable. Like attaining the goal also means I've done the work to feel comfortable with the success, right? So there are a couple ways you can address that. One is just like, let's lower the volume of that wildly improbable goal a little bit until it feels a little better and doesn't trigger that like fear. And then the other one is you can also say meeting the goal means that I'm at a point where I no longer have this dread of the failure. That's part of my goal. And I would love to do a coaching session with you sometime on that, but we don't have time if we're going to get through these questions, because we can do a lot of work to get at where is that dread of failure coming from, and we can loosen that up, right? You don't have to feel that dread forever. That's something that we can really, really get loosened up. That's the kind of coaching that has to happen in a program like Goal Getter School. Andrea says, suggestions on getting settled to write. I get distracted by stuff at home and I can't always go elsewhere like a cafe. So this is one tool for dealing with distraction, right? So let's just say you have to write at home. You can't go to a cafe that day. And it's just a practice over time, but it happens more quickly than you would think, where you get distracted and you go, oh, I'm distracted. I was doing this. And you just gently bring yourself back to the undistracted thing that you were doing, right? You just gently return your focus. You don't beat yourself up over it. I did this a few years ago. I'm not on Twitter anymore because but I did this a few years ago because I would automatically find myself on Twitter and I did not remember even consciously choosing to go over to Twitter. So I just, over the course of like, I don't know, a week and a half, when I'd find myself on Twitter, I'd be like, oh, here I am again. I'm going to go back to the thing I was actually intentionally doing and just gently bringing myself back. Like if you've ever meditated, returning to the breath, returning to the task at hand. And I got to the point where I would catch myself right before I opened it. Right. And then once I was able to do that, it was just a few more tries of not going there at all. Right. So that is when you catch yourself in the distractions. You can also try to minimize the distractions. Obviously, you can try to control for your home environment a little bit more. Sometimes it helps just to do a little bit of journaling beforehand and say, I know there are dirty dishes in the kitchen. I know the floor needs sweeping, or whatever that distraction usually is. I'm definitely going to get to that later today, but I'm giving myself permission right now for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes to focus on this thing, right? Because often it's just this pull of responsibilities that is the distraction. So you can honor that ahead of time and say, yep, we know about all that. You can stop squawking at me to do it. I know about it. I'm going to come back to it. Let's see. Do you offer the 15% educator discount for homeschoolers? Go ahead and email me, sue@pagesandplatforms.com, and we can talk about that. Soraya says, does the 15% discount for educators count? Say I'm an educator in my previous job. Email me, Soraya. We'll talk about it. Let's see. This is the first time I've offered it, so you guys are helping me think through all the ramifications. Christina says, I have several stories in several genres started and desperately want to write them. How do I focus on one? Okay, so imagine you're on a soccer field. I don't know if you're a soccer person. You'll rarely hear me making sports analogies, but imagine you're on a soccer field and you've got 3 soccer balls in front of you. If you try to kick all of those soccer balls at the same time with the same foot, how far are those soccer balls going to go down the field? Right? As opposed to, I'm going to line myself up on the first soccer ball and kick it. And then I'm going to line myself up on the second soccer ball and kick it. Right? So it's visually, or if you're not a visual person, like doing anything you can to remind yourself that the way to make progress further and faster is by concentrating on one at a time. It doesn't mean I'm not going to get to those other soccer balls, but I'm going to have more progress if I focus on one at a time. So there's that. The second piece is, how do you choose, right? Which one that you want to focus on first? And that would be, I think, just getting really quiet and maybe doing some journaling or rereading through what you have and pick the one with the most juice and the most energy behind it right now. Or you can pick the one that you think is furthest along and that you can bring to completion the fastest. So those are the two methods that I recommend. One is, what am I most excited about? Or two is, what is the one that I think I can clear fastest? So I generate excitement and a sense of completion, and then I can move on to the next one. And all these great questions. We're going to go a few minutes late because I want to get to all of the questions. I got 3 more left. Amy says, can you please go over again how we demoralize ourselves with evidence of how we are failures when we set goals that are too lofty? It really hits home. Yes. Okay. So I'll give you an example from Goal Getter School. So I had someone in Goal Getter School, and she was retired. She was doing fine financially. She had a lot of free time. And so she said, I want to write 2,200 words a day. And my coach brain went, like I was a little suspicious, but I asked her questions about how much time she had available, etc. And I was like, okay, she may be able to do it. And if not, we can readjust, right? I can help her figure that out and readjust. So she set a goal for 2,200 words a day. And then her inner saboteur went to work of like, how dare you take this much time for yourself when you could be doing blah, 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 blah for other people. And then the inner saboteur would come in on the back end when she hadn't done it and beat her up for not honoring the word count that she had set for herself. And so when you feel demoralized, right, however your inner saboteur goes about making you feel it, there's kind of 2 examples at play in this one person. Then you feel like, oh, the sense of like defeat or demoralization. And when you're feeling defeated and demoralized, you don't do the writing. That doesn't motivate you to act. Maybe it motivates you to like watch something to distract yourself, or eat something to distract yourself, or shop to distract yourself. Often these are like buffering behaviors that we go to so we don't have to feel that pain of that, right? So when we set that outsized goal and then we don't hit it because it wasn't realistic yet, because we weren't there yet, we don't have the systems and habits in place that we grew over time, your inner saboteur just uses it as evidence against yourself to say why you're a piece of shit and you don't deserve to sit down and write, or you're not capable of making the time, or you don't have the discipline, right? So the way that you talk to yourself and the way that you work with yourself, the more gentle you are. In our culture, they'll be like, you're being too soft on yourself. You're never going to get anything done by being that soft on yourself. No. We're going to take our examples from positive dog training and positive parenting. We're going to use those same tools on ourselves of like, yeah, you absolutely have what it takes to do that. And we're going to build a system for ourselves where we're developing that discipline over time and seeing those incremental gains and feeling the satisfaction of that. And it creates this virtuous loop where we want to keep going and spiraling up, as opposed to setting it too high and not giving ourselves, we don't yet have the tools to do it, and then we spiral down. Another great question. Thanks, Amy. Gayla says, I see what other authors are creating to sell books they already have, and I create long lists of what I need to do to achieve that. But when it comes to implementation, everything takes longer than I planned, and my desire to have those done battles with the number of hours I have per day. I guess my question is how to feel good about what I can realistically accomplish instead of stressed that I'm not moving fast enough. Yes. Okay. So that there's a little of a FOMO element here as well. Like, oh, I see all of the things people could be doing, and therefore I should be doing every single one of them. So that's a false assumption. First of all, what you want to do when you are marketing is it's going to take some experimentation to do this. And it sounds like you're willing to experiment. You want to pick the things that you can do well and that you know actually move the needle. There's a lot of bullshit out there that you do not need to do and does not actually sell books that is going to suck up all of your time that you have for marketing and for writing. So you're going to play around enough so that, and give yourself learning curve time, and then you're going to double down on those things that are proven to work for you. And you get to carve out the number of hours that you're going to devote for it. Right. And understand, like, not only can you not do it all, but you don't have to in order to be successful. And that everything takes longer than I planned in marketing because of that learning curve. We think that everything in the learning curve and how long it takes, I'm like, oh God, that took longer than I thought. We think that means it's going to take that long forever. But when we get acclimated and we know what works and we're just doing that thing again and again and again, the time actually goes down. But there is definitely a learning curve to figure out how long things take, but that doesn't mean that's how long they're going to take forever. So there's a ton to unpack in that question, Gayla, but it's a really good one. That's just like the little mini dive. If you were in the Happily Ever Author Club, we could talk about this in depth too. Jordan says, I'd love to hear any thoughts on knowing which goal to prioritize each week. In the last 3 months, I've focused on finishing the first draft of my book. I'm back and forth on whether to go into revision of my book for the next 3 months or focus on getting shorter pieces published, or both. Okay, that's a great question too. And ultimately, it's up to you. But if you've just finished a draft, I would at least let it sit for like a month, right? Because you need fresh eyes when you're going to go back to it. So why not for the next month, you're going to focus on getting shorter pieces published while you let that draft sit. And then for the 2 months after that, you can work on the draft again. You can go back to that draft. So that's just a decision point, but that's a way of thinking about it that I've seen be successful for writers in the past. If anyone has questions about the 15% discount, just go ahead and email me. Carol says, can you give us positive regard self-messages that is not egotistic? Okay, this is so good, Carol, because arrogance, egotistical things means I'm better than everybody else. That's what egotistical and like arrogant means. I'm better than everybody else. Positive self-regard is not being egotistical, right? Me saying I'm a good coach is not me being egotistical, right? Me saying that other person's a horrible coach and I'm better, that's being egotistical, right? So your self-regard can be like, I am working on being the kind of person who shows up to do my writing every day, and I'm so proud of myself on the days that I get there, right? It can be as simple as that. That's a really big question. I'm actually writing a book right now where a big part of the book is I'm giving you stories you can tell yourself, like writing prompts that you can tweak if you want to, but ways to think about common challenges that will give you positive ways of thinking about it. So yes. But really, question, is that really egotistical or not? Because culture will tell women especially, you're being full of yourself, you're being arrogant, you're being egotistical. When often, no, that's just fostering a sense of self-esteem and confidence, and there's nothing wrong with doing that. Nobody gets hurt when you do that. Let's see. Judy says, this is the last question I'm going to do. Judy says, this course sounds amazing and your tips are doable. I live, yes, with chronic fatigue syndrome, and I'm currently deep in a valley. I feel like my brain left town, leaving no forwarding address. I also suspect I'm dealing with ADD. If I'm feeling better in a few months, would it be possible to join the second group? Yes. So you can either, I'll say this for everybody, you can join the fall group now and you're just waiting for fall, but you'll still have an opportunity to join the fall group later on this summer. And as someone, I don't have chronic fatigue, but I do have chronic health conditions that take a lot of management. So I just empathize with you, and I'm sending you lots of love, and just keep up the hope and doing all of the things that are within your levers of control to feel better. So it sounds like what you need right now is some rest and lots of self-care and love. So I'm rooting for you, Judy. Okay, one more from Chris. Chris is asking too many good questions. I feel alone with the work. I was never able to find a solid group or just people who can read first draft material and give constructive comments. It's the loneliest feeling in the world. So there's the dramatic piece again, Chris, and I'm saying this with all the love. I believe you, and focusing on that feeling and soaking in the loneliness is a way to close off the possibilities of finding a different way of being and finding a different group of people. Right. So I'd really start to question, is there another way that I can think about this? So obviously I can do a plug for our program, the Happily Ever Author Club, where we have people in that program. And we have developmental editors who you can talk to them every single week. But there are a lot of wonderful groups out there. London Writer Salon does write-ins every day. There are tons of Facebook groups. It's something to wade through because not everyone is going to be able to give you valuable feedback. But we have something called the Super Hardcore Editing Group model, which is going to be, it's either in this newsletter or next week's, where we'll show you how to start an online writing group as well. So I want you to give up on the idea that this is hopeless and you're always going to be in loneliness. And I want you to start solving for it. Okay, my friends, that's a wrap. Thank you so much. We will hopefully see you in the future. We do lots of free programs and free classes. So keep on the newsletter and keep signing up for things. And if you have any questions about Goal Getter School, just email me. Okay, bye-bye.